Welcome, everybody, to our latest episode of Unlocking Vertex AI. Today, I am joined by Steve Porowski, who runs the public sector business here at TTEC Digital. Steve, if you want to introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll kind of jump into the conversation around AI in public sector, the role that we're seeing it play within a lot of different agencies, and get into that whole conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. So Steve Porowski here. I've been with TTEC for about 25 years, focused primarily on enterprise contact centers. And then over the last 15 years, primarily focused on public sector, which is Fed DoD, Fed civilian, and state and local. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. So Stephen, we've been working for several years together around a lot of the Google things that we've been doing, especially with the advancement of AI, whether it's generative or language models. I know we're starting to see a increasing demand for this across both federal and state level agencies. So I think maybe we just start there from like kind of what you're seeing from customers, different agencies, kind of what they're doing, what they're looking for. So let's just start there, I guess.
Sure. I think the advent of generative AI has enabled the traditional IVR phone tree, press 1 for this, press 2 for that, and the enormous amount of frustration that we all saw over the years of getting to a live person where we end up screaming agent all the time to get to a live body. What I've seen in public sector, the ability to have conversations in IVRs and have the translation of those conversations using generative AI to really get a very effective and clear transcript of exactly what the customer wants. And that shift has made the ability to provide services, whether it's health and human services or labor-related services or tax or road or transportation-related services, to be much, much more effective without having to speak to a live person.
Gotcha. So I'm curious because, when I contrast what we do on a regular basis with what I'll call commercial customers, the non-public sector, and you get into the public sector side, we've heard from, I think, a lot of different agencies that there's always a challenge from a funding perspective. Like if there's a regulation that changed, if there's, a pandemic that happens, you can't necessarily just scale up overnight and add 100 people to be able to answer phone calls or be able to interact with citizens. And so there's this need to be able to provide some level of just automation on the front end, be able to let people have access to information, whatever they need to do, right?
Yeah. So there's two things there that I think is even more effective in government than in the commercial sector. And, we all now have great experiences. I mean, some more better than others with certain airlines on what they're able to do when flights are delayed or transportation's impacted. And the notion of those commercial applications are now readily available in government has been great. The other thing that I think that makes it really unique that we haven't seen before is most of these applications that we build for our clients in public sector are transaction priced. So you only pay for what you consume. And that makes a huge difference, especially if there's a need, like, God forbid, another COVID or some flood or some other catastrophe where you need immediate need, but that surge only lasts for a short amount of time. So government agencies, just like commercial airlines, don't want to pay for that license or subscription model throughout the year, just for those peak periods.
Okay, so then I'm seeing what you're saying. So like from an AI standpoint, because traditionally, if you think about contact center systems, people are going out, they've got to license it on a per agent basis. AI, I think historically what we've seen from the hyperscalers, especially from Google, they're going out and doing it more on a consumption model, and being able to have it more on demand. You can scale up if you need to. So, okay, makes sense. So the last session that we did, we were talking to Mark Eichten, who heads up from a like an architecture standpoint, a lot of the delivery that we do at TTEC around Google. We got into the nuance conversation, end of life for that. I'm curious if you're seeing the same thing, because if I remember correctly, there's a lot of deployments of nuance out there, whether it's on premise or that's in the cloud across different agencies. And knowing that this is going end of life, like, are you seeing people start to have the conversation? Are they preparing for it?
They are. There's some laggards. Like any adoption of new technology, there's embedded bases of skilled IT, professional service linguists on any large enterprise. Again, one of the big changes that I've seen is the ability to go from this notion of having to tune IVRs over and over again, which is in the more traditional nuanced like technologies. And with generative AI, the tuning process is so much faster, and we're able to use the agentic or generative part to do that tuning without having to get humans to look at lists of failed IVR attempts. So it's very, very different and makes a really great play for a solution like Google Contact Center Artificial Intelligence with Dialogflow and Vertex AI.
Okay. I mean, I can see that. I think my biggest concern, I've seen this with a few of our customers already, is just the timeline, because you've got some of these deployments that have been out there for 5, 10 years. They're complex. They have a lot of different, self-service applications built in, and that if you haven't budgeted for this at this point, I mean, these projects may take 6 months or a year to be able to convert over. And so making sure that people have actually prepared for it, right? Because they're not going to just go and find the money accidentally. And this thing is going into life. It's going to go into support. People are not going to be able to keep using it.
Right. I mean, it's a good point. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with one of the largest transportation and tolling authorities that had a very traditional press one or say whatever to get to a customer service. And those phone trees were really, really long. And customers are complaining, and they're already saying, and we have these on call recordings when they get to a live agent, why can't this be more efficient so I don't have to get to you to have this interaction? Because all my other, whether it's CVS at pharmacies or other pharmacy, everything can be done automatically with a chat on my phone or IVR through a voice interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, but from a security standpoint, what you're also seeing, like, because obviously we do a lot of stuff around FedRAMP, and that's kind of flowed down into the state ramp security requirements. And from an AI standpoint, obviously that everybody has questions around, are things secure? Where does it live? What's happening with the data? So are you having those conversations? Are you seeing that kind of, questions from customers or from agencies?
Almost every one of them. It's probably the second conversation or the second statement after the how does it work, and then is it secure, and then is it secure? Is it FedRAMPed? Is it FedRAMP high? How is my data about my customer at the public sector level, whether it's transportation or health and human service, how is that data protected? And then even further, how is the knowledge that these AI tools use? How do I make sure it's not going out into the open internet to source that information? And so many, I'll speak to Google. They do a great job of putting a wall around the sources of knowledge to make sure that the data that an IVR or a conversational IVR is only sourcing that information from systems that are either in-house or publicly available on the commercial website for that state or federal agency.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And we keep seeing this as a theme come up. We've got customers that come to us. They want to be able to do the most basic, what I'll say, of a conversational agent. Let me give you a bunch of content. Let a conversational agent be able to answer questions around it. But part of the challenge is that the content's either written in a way on a website that is not easily consumed by AI, or you've got 100-page documents that traditionally a contact center agent was sitting there looking at, and they've memorized things. They understand how to navigate the document. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be able to easily answer questions with AI. So there is a work effort required to go in and get that cleaned up, get the data ready for AI.
And that thinking about the conversations, whether it's at the state and local level or at the federal level, we had a conversation the other day with one of the state agencies that is implementing Google for one of their programs. And what's unique about TTEC and our capabilities, we've been running FedRAMP platforms in our own cloud since 2016.
Right.
We're FedRAMP authorized. We have an impact level 4 authorization for DoD. So security has been at the forefront of a lot of what we've done for the last 10 years. And in my conversations today, I get to say we have a whole support organization, soup to nuts, that is familiar with all the guardrails around making sure that U.S. data and public sector clients stays on this soil. So
Yeah.
that whole wrapper around our services makes us really unique and brings a lot of confidence to our teams and the conversations we have with our customers.
Well, yeah, just the fact that, I mean, you've got a whole team of people that are based in the US that I know some of these customers require security clearances for the people that are they're accessing systems. Like that's not something that just happens overnight. It's been a pretty significant investment that's happened, but just also knowing how to navigate the FedRAMP landscape is pretty significant. So I'll take us down a slightly different path for a second, because it goes back to a conversation you and I had a few months ago where we see that, it really kind of, I think at the state level, you've got the need for citizens to be able to access information easier. That's a kind of a regular demand. We hear that from the voice of the citizen, if you want to call it that. But you've got a lot of different websites across a state level government that has information on it. The idea that you can potentially go and use a virtual agent that actually can sit in multiple places, but it can actually access, consume all this different information on these different websites. Do you have a strategy around this? I mean, like an approach? I'm curious how that's changing things from just the accessibility of information at that layer.
It's very different. Going back to the conversation around nuance, where we had to train intents and have, text files full of knowledge sources.
Sure.
So there is tuning that goes involved, but it's at the metadata level versus going through and tuning the exact data. We're again, another transportation client where we're referring to acquiring data from their ITSM tool. So that was one source of knowledge. So that's happened to be ServiceNow or a Microsoft Dynamics CRM that happened to be in place to be another source of knowledge, or a Salesforce knowledge store. So
Sure.
It varies by customer, but being able to point to secure systems on either the government agency or the State Department's secure side of their servers, again, puts a very nice guardrail around protecting information that should only be acquired for these types of applications for IVRs using Vertex AI.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'll pose this last question to you, because it's I think the hottest trend with AI right now. Maybe it's who has the best model, but the second maybe most popular term is agentic, right? It seems to be coming up everywhere. Everyone has some interest in it. And so I'm definitely curious to get your view on this. It's still very early. So like, where is it going? Right. Where are you seeing conversations happen around this? Do you think people will use it? Right.
Well, it's a very interesting topic, and the models do vary, and the rules around the models vary tremendously. So I was working with a particular client that tried to use a model that was part of the platform come with model.
Yeah.
And what they were trying to do is weed out threat calls going into that department. So very negative conversations, swear words, etc. But
Sure.
They wanted to capture those and escalate them. Well, some models won't even accept that type of language, so it rejects the conversation completely. So
Gotcha.
We needed to find a model that would accept bad words or slangs that would not be normally acceptable, and then push that into the AI solutions, because it was important for that agency to understand where those bad actors were in a conversation with their agents.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's interesting. So it goes, I mean, definitely from a configuration standpoint, I can see that there's tools available. I think we've both experienced it within the Google landscape. At least it feels like they've kind of got the most mature tool set at the moment, from both a grounding standpoint as well as being able to control, like you said, high risk terminology, being able to identify those things, but still be able to manage it. So, yeah. But I'm going to go back to my agentic question though. So from a back office automation, where we're kind of crossing out of the traditional, like, let me put a virtual agent or conversation on the front end, but it's like actually go in and automate stuff on the back end, whether it's processing claims faster or being able to update records. Are departments starting to look at this yet?
They are. I think, there are business process automation tools that have been baked into various CRM platforms, and they're out there today. They're not performing at the scale of any of the hyperscalers. So there's starting to be a decoupling of what we used to call robotic process automation tools and have that sit inside a Google workload. And so that's just starting. I don't think it's quite there yet because the traditional CRM providers are trying to hold on to that capability inside their applications.
Okay. All right. So it's going to come down to who can integrate into those different systems, who's going to be kind of a thought leader of identifying where AI can actually be applied instead of just waiting to, somebody has to be first. Somebody's going to be the early adopter.
Right. That's right.
Gotcha.
That's right.
Look, this has been really good, Steve. I appreciate you coming and spending a few minutes with me, kind of getting into the world of public sector. You're definitely the expert in the business around this. So we appreciate everybody taking time to listen in on the conversation, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great, Caleb. Thanks so much for having me, and look forward to getting together again.
Awesome. Thanks.